Hi everyone, this is Nate Ray. This is probably the 10th time I've started this video just because my kids keep coming interrupting me, but that's all right. That's what kids do. So, talking about the readings this week and the way in which journals have things published, it was pretty eye-opening to me. I had never really considered the way that all goes down, so like for example, in the Hale reading, it talks about this idea of the editor as gatekeeper and how that's not accurate. But I was one of those that always assumed it was that way, that you had this, J. Jonah Jameson figure, making all the ultimate decisions and saying, kind of like what he says in there, protecting the profession and its practitioners from unsound ideas, like it says on page 164. That's kind of how the way I always pictured it. It's the way it's portrayed in movies and TV, and so go figure. That's not the way it actually is. Um, and that's a good thing. I think that's great that you know that it's they're wanting to get a variety of opinions and points of view on these things before they go out. I mean, you think about the way that the printed word is scrutinized nowadays, especially, every little thing is picked apart. It makes sense that they'd want to have, you know, these ideas thoroughly fleshed out, vetted, and have a lot of people put in their 2 cents before they, go through with it. So I think that's great. I love the way that Hayhoe worded this idea that a discipline's body of knowledge is not a treasury that must be protected at all costs from barbarian hordes. Instead, the world of ideas is a marketplace that should welcome a variety of vendors. Well said. I mean, that's exactly it. It's what is it exactly that you're protecting if your purpose is to get the truth out there. So, it makes me wonder how things would be different in any type of media, but in these kind of journals and journalism in general, if everybody had that same mentality of, we want to have as much variety as we can, giving input on these kind of things. So that was pretty eye-opening. Like I said, I was also fascinated by the reviews in Rebecca's pieces and thanks for sharing those. By the way, I think that was great that we could see a little bit of insight into how that actually happens because um, I guess at least for people like me, I never really understood how that all happened, and it's not all that dissimilar from the way in which we review each other's work here in this program. So it's pretty cool. So I guess I kind of always thought of those things as they just go straight to the editor and they make the final call, but I didn't know there was such a thorough, exhaustive process that you go through first. And again, I think that's great that that happens, that takes place. But the types of comments there that we were reading in there were particularly insightful because they were, um, not so they were matter of fact without being condescending, and they were also very encouraging and constructive without being patronizing, because I think those are the two extremes, the demeaning or condescending and then the patronizing you know uh, side of it, and it's easy to fall on one side of that spectrum or the other. In doing those reviews, I know I'm guilty of that myself. I tend to either go one way or the other, probably more towards the you know, couching any criticism in a kind of a flowery, complimentary way. And that doesn't do anybody any favors, but neither does being, extremely critical or demeaning. So uh, I think those were excellent examples of the right way to do it. So, yeah. And then also the on the reviewer guidelines, those were pretty eye opening as well. Like in the TCQ reviewer guidelines, the idea, it says, is the author familiar with the existing relevant scholarship? And another one was, are the claims original? So these are awesome tips because so I've never had anything published, so I can't say that I've ever really worried about that very much. But if I were to publish something, I'd have to kind of broaden my scope of research so that I'm ensuring that there's not something already out there that is going to discredit any of my claims, or that's making the same exact claim I'm trying to make and is therefore redundant. So you kind of have to be even more thorough, obviously, when you're publishing something. And I thought those were really two excellent tips. Just kind of know what's going on out there with regard to that current or that specific topic. And then from the JBTC, the idea of not allowing reviews to be influenced by the origins of a manuscript, nationality, religious or political beliefs, etc. That is, obviously a really good idea, really good tip. I just wonder how successful people are in doing that, separating the piece from the author. It's easy to do it if you really don't have any background knowledge on the person. It's harder to when you do. I'm curious as to what kind of tips people have for doing that, for distancing the work from the actual, writer. So, but I think that's absolutely what you have to do if you're an effective reviewer. So, and then obviously agreeing to review manuscript for which they have the subject expertise required to carry out a proper assessment. Again, that can be a little bit tricky because I know in my experience, I've reviewed things even here in this program that I feel maybe I haven't done the sufficient research on it to know whether they're on point or not, and yet I'm trying to give them pointers on it, and it's probably not a good idea. If you really don't have the background knowledge in it, you probably shouldn't go that way and try to lecture anybody on what they're doing. So again, excellent tips, but reading all of that, I think it would be fun to be a reviewer, but I don't know that I could pull it off very well. As I said, I kind of go one way or the other, and to those extremes, and then I think I need those skills of walking that fine line if I were to do that, and then I'd really have to hone those other skills of doing that additional research and things like that. So, but yeah, anyway, really cool, an eye-opening subject this week. So yeah, it was very well worth the read. So anyway, I hope everybody has a great week.